Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dee Reinhardt with Illinois WorkNet, and in honor of Workforce Development Week, we are hosting a series of webinars on interview tips. Today, our first session is on information technology, and we have as our guest speaker Bill Markham from DICES, and Bill is going to tell you just a moment about what it is that he does for DICES, and we'll jump right into our presentation.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Dee, for inviting me today. I just love talking about our industry and what we do, so love to help out everybody that is in need of a job. Well, first of all, I'm the senior recruiter here at DICES. DICES has been in the information technology staff augmentation space for the last 15 years and for the last 8 years here in Chicago. We also have a more of a consulting practice as well to coincide with that helps our business and helps our clients out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your time with us today. So what we're going to do is we're going to have some tips here that Bill's going to talk about, and we're going to start out with a phone interview. So Bill, tell me about your 3 top tips for succeeding at an interview. What would you tell your best friend or a sibling if you knew they were going on an interview?
Well, that's a great question because I've gotten to do that for my sister on multiple occasions. To begin with, my top 3 tips for any interviewer is number 1, the first impression. I know that's very vague, but for me that includes the dressing of being dressed professionally, great, first handshake, saying hello, eye contact, and that first minute of getting to know each other. I think people forget how important that first impression is, but it really it still has a high percentage of when people are hired by just delivering well on that first impression. Second, I would say mirroring the interviewer's techniques. What I mean by that is making sure that you're speaking at the proper volume. That's if there is any questions that they're asking, that you're at the right speed. Just you're in a good rhythm with the interviewer. Very difficult to do. You can't, especially if you haven't interviewed in 3 to 5 years or even 10 years. But it is something that helps in the interview process. And the third most important thing I would say is just the follow-up. As we say in our business, try and do everything you can in your control to help with that interview. What you can do with that is by, yes, number 1, making sure that you have the email addresses of all the interviewers, but number 2, bringing, and I'll talk about this later, is bringing a thank you card for all the people that are interviewing for a face-to-face interview with you, and filling them out in the lobby and giving those to the receptionist. That puts you a step ahead of any other candidate that is interviewing for the position and doesn't wait the 3 to 4 days for the mail to come into their inbox. So
that's a great idea.
Those would be, I think, the 3 most important things. Obviously, there's a lot of other things we'll talk about today, but if you do those things, I think you'll do well.
So talk about what's on the screen right now for our audience. What's
Sure.
about a phone interview?
Well, today in the IT consulting world and even in the perm market, really our clients are asking us for phone screens. And what that initial phone screen is usually talking about technical abilities and in some cases intangibles, or vice versa. Sometimes they just want to get to know the candidate and see if they'll work well within their team, and then they'll get to the technical questions later. But there is that initial get to know each other phone screen. And what's important about the phone screen is being prepared. It is the most difficult interview to do from both the interviewer side as well as the interviewee side. So being prepared and being ready for it is very important. First of all, knowing the job description, knowing exactly everything that you have in front of you is very important, because that way you'll, if they do go in other directions and you have to think of other things, you don't have to worry about, what is on the job description. You've already nailed that down and know where your experience lines up and where it doesn't. What work story will you share? What I mean by that is by taking each project or each thing that you do and being able to use that experience in every answer that you have. So when when an interviewer is asking you a question, making sure that you take that experience from your last position or one of your last positions and use it in the answer. For example, any project manager that I work with would would talk about, well, this is how I saved XYZ Corporation $5 million at my last project, and that really gives the impression that you're on the same page and that you have the experience to match what they're asking.
And that's exactly what a company wants to know, is how can you help them?
Exactly right. I mean, they want to hear in almost every answer how you can add value to their organization. And if you can do that, you've got a very good chance at that position.
Great. So what's the next point? That what will you ask?
And what I mean by that is making sure that that you always have written down questions for the interviewer. If you have good questions, even if they answer them, it's even better to have something that they can't ask. But making sure that you at least have one or two. In the phone screen, there's usually not a lot of time for questions, but making sure that you do have some about the organization as well as yourself.
I like this next bullet point. Sit up straight or stand up. Now tell me why you gave me that bullet point.
I think people forget, this is, again, what I'm talking about with controlling an interview. I mean, it's very difficult. A phone screen, I can't stress enough how difficult it is to do a phone screen, because you cannot read the interviewer at all. You have no idea what they're doing. They could be they could be texting their family about tonight's dinner. They could be, thinking about, what can of Sprite they're going to have in the next 20 minutes. It's very difficult. It's a very difficult process. So what you can control is your breathing. By sitting up straight, you're able to convey that confidence over the phone. Standing up even gives it even more, because you're really able to talk from the diaphragm, gives you confidence, shows the people that you're passionate about what you do. And if that passion and confidence comes out, this will help do it. One of the main things that people forget in an interview process, especially over the phone.
And everybody always needs to smile. Things just come out better when you smile, right?
It's the number one thing people forget. I'm on a conference call the other day, and people are answering the questions very well, and it's going very well. But they're just that little bit of intangible, and it's not a laugh. It's not a nervousness. It's just that confidence will come through if you're smiling while you're talking.
Yeah. Let's pull out a poll question here for the audience. Take a moment and answer, before an interview, and you can pick as many of these items as you would like. Are you watching this, Bill? Are they getting it all right?
I certainly am. Looks like everybody's getting it all right.
Woohoo! I like it when it happens like that. All right. Good answers, everybody. Let's go back to our presentation here. I'm going to hide this poll. And let's talk about what's the difference between a phone interview and an in-person interview, other than that actual face-to-face interaction.
Well, A lot of things are similar, but as we were talking about before in my three most important points, a lot of those things come in for an in-person interview. So obviously the number one difference is that you get to meet the person or persons that are going to be doing the interview process, which which is great because you get to really learn, what the organization is about. You get to see, what they're presenting to you, and kind of see the process, and even see where you might be able to work. Um, but really, I think it's knowing the reaction of the interviewer, unless they're such a skilled interviewer or it's just their personality. You'll be able to get instant feedback of where you're at in the interview process.
Great. So all of these items that are on your list here are just things that people always need to pay attention to. But let's talk about that first bullet point, that go over your resume to make sure you can speak about all of your experience and have it printed out. So,
This is very important. This is one of the most important things, and I think people forget this point because they think, well, I know everything that's on my resume. This is not new information. This is my experience. But there's always something that you might have done, depending on your experience level of 3, 5, 10 years ago, that they might ask, saying, well, gosh, that would be important for this project. Can you speak about it? And in your preparation, it helps to, like I was talking about earlier, having that work experience, having that work story that can convey that experience. So making sure that every bullet point you can really speak to.
great. Let's pull out one more poll question real quick here and see what the audience actually says here. During an interview, let's talk about, see that last answer on there, Bill? The don't fidget. How does
I certainly do.
how do people handle being nervous in an interview? What's a tip that you can give them to help them not fidget?
Oh, that's a fantastic question because everybody's nervous. Doesn't matter how many interviews you've done. It is a difficult process. I think making sure that you can you you can use your hands or use your body to talk. That's completely okay. And in an interview process, I would use that time to kind of let your body do some professional movement. If that doesn't work for you or if that's not in your personality, just make sure that that you practice having your hands together or your hands at your side or hands on a desk. It is just like anything else. You need to practice it so that you're not touching your nose, you're not touching your eye. All these things might um, subconsciously tell the interviewer that you are nervous and not um, going in the right direction to no fault of your own. I mean, just um, so I would just say practice it. Make sure you know how you know because you can catch yourself in an interview saying, okay, I need to keep my hands on my chair or crossed in front of me if that works out best for me.
Make a conscious effort to do it, right?
Correct.
So on this next slide, we've got some more tips. Um, let's talk quickly about how this can help a person prepare.
Well, the first thing you should do is go over the company's website. That is probably your number one best bet because that'll help you with your interview preparation as well as what questions you'll be preparing for the interview. Things that I like to look for are the mission statement or what the company stands for. What you're able to dig in from that is finding out what's important to the culture of the company. You can find out they believe in collaboration, they believe in you know teamwork, they believe in accountability, things that are important to the organization. And again, just like just like you would with um, with your resume, you would make sure that you would have stories that might match up with their mission statement. That'll give you an edge over other people that might overlook that. And
Great point.
also talked about the news section. The news section is great because you might find out that the company's stock went down 50 points that day or went up. Just knows that you've been paying attention and that you know that the up to the minute news for that day. And it's obviously when you're working for a company, you're not looking at all those things every day, and an interviewer will be impressed that you did that extra bit of due diligence.
That's great. I love LinkedIn. Tell me about that LinkedIn point.
Dee, I know you love LinkedIn, so I apologize that this is my point because you are the expert on this. So, but from my point of view, I love LinkedIn. I think it's, for me, it's my go-to social media because it's great for, friends as well as business associates and networking. But it's also great to learn more about organizations as well as your interviewer. Um, the reason I talk about the interviewer is because then you get to see their work history. A lot of managers out there started, in the same boat that you are in, and the same type of position, so you can kind of see where they went and the types of skills that they had. You might have even worked at one of the same companies or have heard of those companies before. Um, you don't necessarily need to use those in the interview, but you can use those, um, maybe the skills or kind of the career path as a good guide of what they might be looking for.
Great. Obviously, you want to bring a notebook and pen just to be prepared in case you need to write yourself a follow-up thing to do or address anything that they want to do. And then you mentioned the point earlier about bringing the thank you notes to fill out in the lobby. I love that tip. Wanda is asking in the chat about, do companies give out business cards so that you as the interviewee can send them an email for thank you? If they don't hand you one, is it okay to ask?
It is definitely okay to ask. And exactly like Wanda was saying, it's okay to ask and then tell them why. So, do you happen to have a business card? I'd love to send you a thank you note via email after the interview. And every interviewer is going to say that's great, no problem. I can do that for you. So definitely ask every interviewer for that. Plus, if you're doing multiple interviews, it's very difficult to remember everybody's name, their spelling of their name, and all their emails, and it's much easier to get cards than ask them.
Exactly. So let's pull up our last poll question here. After an interview, and what I would like for Bill to say for our audience, what is an appropriate, and I think we're going to get to this, so tell me if we already are.
Okay.
And we can do this at the end. Let's think about what is appropriate follow-up. And then we can talk about this when we get a little bit further in the presentation.
Sure.
All right. We're going to move this over and go on with our presentation. Now this next slide, and just to remind everybody, there is a handout here, and the slides are full-page slides so that you will be able to read all of these questions. And I'm not going to have Bill talk about each of them, but these are all great prep questions. And I'm sure that most of us have answered at least 95% of them on one interview or another. So how can an IT person answer these questions without talking in Geek Speak?
It's very easy. Just kind of looking at the technical questions and the intangibles as two separate things. I think it's very important to look at both with great importance and at the same level of importance. But for these questions, it's very conversational. It's talking about things that are um, you know, talking about specific relocation, or tell me about your career path, things that are uh, about your passion, and using that in your favor of confidence and passion, and show what you like to do.
Great. Now this next slide has some more questions that you might be asked during an interview or when somebody is talking to you, maybe at a job fair or on that phone screen. So what are the important ones that somebody always needs to have a prepared answer for?
I think one that's very important is, why are you seeking a new opportunity? It can come out, you can have a prepared answer, but making sure that that one is answered, um, with all your heart is all I can say. It's that one is the most important thing. It's the reason why people move jobs. Everybody's answer is different, but it is very important.
Great. And then we have some more questions here, and these are geared more to that project management type of activity that a lot of IT people find themselves in. So what is the most important thing the interviewee needs to impart to the interviewer about their IT background?
And yeah, that's obviously a great question. For every IT position, the same thing that everybody focuses on is what specific skills, and in technology, it's what technical skills have you used, and where have you used them for this position. So that's a very specific niche, and that's not unlike other technologies for other companies, for other positions, but it's very very important in the IT industry. The reason I picked project management as kind of the example today is that it does have a dual component. It has a very business component where you're working with the business unit and the quote unquote end users to get the job done. But it also is working with the technical folks. So it's a dual role. Um, you know, Great communication skills, and these are things that are needed, especially in the interview process. If you cannot be able to communicate well of what you do and what you've done, project management is probably not your best profession.
All right. We've got some questions in the chat pod from the audience, and I want to address a couple of them right now. Diane is asking, what about how to answer current salary or what salary you are looking for? And I've got a piece that I'm going to slide over here right now. It's part of Illinois WorkNet, and I'm going to copy this link into the chat pod so that it becomes a live link for you to go to for
Right.
future reference. What this part of Illinois WorkNet does for you is it lets you go into this site, search on a particular career. So for example, a project manager, and click on the career wages and trends, do that keyword search, click go, and then review the chart so that you've got some wage data by where you live. So if you live in the collar counties of Chicago versus down in the southern tip of Illinois, those wages will change. But how would you say, Bill, is a good answer for somebody to project to their person, to the interviewer?
This is a very good question because it's very difficult. This is because companies still right now and always will be concerned about budget, and each position will fit into a particular uh, a particular bucket for their budget. So what an interviewer is trying to do is gauge, is this going to be within the ballpark of what we're looking for. Um, the reason it's not important to most interviewees is because um, the top three reasons why people leave jobs is not based on money. That's not saying that's not a motivating reason, but it's not one of the top three. So I tell people it's it's great to do what Dee just said, is do your due diligence, know what the market is bearing, and just use that to, I am very motivated by the position. I think it's a challenge for myself. I think it'll be great for my career, and I think I can really help in the position. But I don't see, salary is something that we can definitely talk about at the end. I think, as long as they know that you're interested in market value and not being, that you know the market and that are open to it, that's a good thing. Now, if they keep pushing to the point where they're not allowing you out of that question, then of course you have to answer the question and be ready with, I would say, a range. I would never say I'm looking for $90,000. I would say I'm looking in the range of 80s and 90s. That way, gives yourself some leeway instead of, if you say 90 and they want somebody at 80,000, you're not putting yourself out of the position.
And by using this resource that I just posted there, it gives you that wage range that Bill is just telling you to be able to quote. We've got another question from Mirage that says, how does this comply with Illinois labor exchange system today or with the rules of Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act?
Well, I have to be honest, I don't know as far as exactly how that works, but as far as answering the question on wage, there's certain things that companies cannot ask, but wage they can definitely ask. It is something that a company is able to ask without any challenges from the government.
Okay. Vicki is asking, how do you handle in an interview the fact that you were let go from a company due to new management regarding you as not a good fit for the company?
Another softball question, Dee. No, that's a very good question. Very difficult. It's the hardest thing to do is making sure that you're still positive, even if you were let go for any reason. Staying positive about your old organization. I would, make sure that it is short and truthful, and then use the positives of what you did professionally well at the last organization. So, start off with that truth of, it was due to a budgetary cut, or, it was due to, management decision. And then if they dig into, management decision could mean I got fired. And then if at that point, I would make sure that any way that you can be honest, but then turn it into a positive, so that you're not dwelling on that answer. Because the worst thing that can happen is if you go down that road and then start telling a story about it, it could be a 10-minute story, and you don't want, that's the last thing that you want to happen.
Right, right. Let's go on to the next slide, and then we'll answer a couple more questions. At the end of an interview, is there anything particular here on this slide that you really want to point out to the audience?
I think just making sure, in your nervousness or at the end of an interview, that you're really focused on, okay, is there anything I can control at the end of the interview? And one of them is questions that there's no way that they could answer, which is, how can I clarify anything on my resume? That's just asking, is there any questions that you had on my answer, that I can clarify now? And it's a great time. They might say, yes, don't understand what you did at XYZ Corporation. Can you kind of expand on that? Or that's not really how we do things here. Can you, have you done things in a different manner? That's great. That, really allows you then to, maybe, talk about things that um, and not fix, but really, talk about the importance of what you do and clarify in, any answer that the interviewer has in their mind before you leave the building.
Great. Now, you mentioned a little bit ago about intangibles, and that intangibles are 40% or more of why a candidate is hired. What can candidates share that demonstrate their grasp of the intangibles, and explain for the audience what you mean by intangibles?
Well, that is a very, very important part, and what we're learning even right now, it's that, that the first impression, that the intangibles, um, you know, and when I mean intangibles, I mean those soft skills, things that are not on a resume, um, and especially in the IT field, people are so driven by uh, technology and technology skills. More people, positions don't work out because there's a lot of collaboration, and those intangibles need to be there so that people can work together. So those soft skills of, are you a great team player? Are you somebody that can be a great listener? Can you be a leader? Can you, know when to jump on board with the organization? You can give these cues in your answers in an interview, um, and it'll show you that you can be part of the team. And that's why I wanted to talk about how big the mission statement is, because a lot of times companies will tell you this is what's important to us, and if again, if that matches up to who you are, it's going to be on your way to a good match.
Great, great. So then the next thing that we want to talk about here, as we have titled, is assess the situation. So talk about how our audience can use the tips that you've got on the screen to make sure that they do the right thing.
Well, this is great because you can do these things before the interview, and then uh, not think about them during the interview. And what I mean by that is, read those, have these questions down for yourself before the interview, and then, just kind of stow them away. And then after the interview, you can kind of go back over and make sure that that you understand all these. And it's important because you want to know how many people interviewed you. You want to know which of those people are going to be your colleagues, which ones, who's going to be the team lead or the boss. Is there an outside interviewer like HR or another department, just so that you really know who you're meeting with. Um, um, and then, like we talked at the beginning, the reason is you want to make sure that you send everyone a individual thank you note, and know, okay, I didn't know that person was going to be the interview. I've got their card now. I can also I can check them on LinkedIn when I get home. And then, as far as the questions, what what you can do in your email answer, if there was any question that was, that you didn't feel like you answered in your best light, you can kind of quickly in your email response kind of talk about it. Say, this is what I did at my last organization, doing project management. You talked about doing things like this, and this is my example of my understanding and what I did. You know, it's a great way for anybody to say, well, that wasn't my best answer, but I've got time to do it over email, and you have 24 hours to get that to them, so that's not a big deal.
I like that suggestion. That's really a great tip. So let's let's get into the questions that we had typed already from some of our audience members and get those answered. And then if anybody else has a question for Bill while we're answering the other questions, please type them into the chat pod. And we also have our manufacturing session happening at 2:30 today, and the healthcare session is happening at 2:30 tomorrow. And then we're going to be talking about our interview practice tool at 12:30 tomorrow. So let's answer a couple of questions here. And we got that one. How do you deal with a gap in a resume and justify that gap in an interview process?
Again, I would answer it exactly like I would, you know, when talking about how you were let go from an organization or why you left a position. Again, even if it's the most positive reason, say you were leaving for, you know, maternity leave, which is a great reason for family, or you were taking care of family. Even if it's that positive, making sure that that you don't dwell on that answer. And the reason for that, you want to get back into the why you're qualified for the position. So even if you were not working for 6 months, that does not mean that you're not qualified for the job. It just means it's a tough job market. Always it's not easy. Finding position is not. It is a process, and as long as you're able to talk about, yes, I was continually looking. I also at the time was building up my skills in my profession, doing this, and then this is how I can help you in your organization. Is
Great.
how I would end every answer.
Great. Now, Wanda asked, is it good to have a project manager profile set up before going in for an interview? And Wanda, I want you to type in the chat pod if you mean on LinkedIn, and if you do, I'm going to answer that question. So we're going to skip that one for just a second and move on to the next one, which is, when asked about my compensation expectations, I try to give two numbers, what I need to live and what I'm looking for. I try to base the number 2 one on geographic location. Is that the right or the wrong way to respond?
I would say, I don't know if it's a wrong way, but from the interviewer side of things, they're not going to think of, they're going to be thinking of their budget and what range that they're in, and if you're fitting within that range. What I would make sure that you do is, again, like we talked about earlier, give that range, and in that range should be, what you're looking for, and what's the bottom level that you would consider, and that's that would be implied, during your answer. But I wouldn't, as far as that starts getting into a personal, why I need this, and really at that point, especially in an interview, if it's the first face-to-face, it might be the final interview, it might not. You just want to give a good range so that you can be able to talk about the position.
Great. Chelsea added into the chat pod for everybody our link to our workplace skills. That is talking all about those intangibles that Bill was talking about. So if you want to go and take a look at any of those workplace skills, those are all the soft skills and everything, that might help you in some of those, how you can make examples of how you did those sorts of things on the job in case somebody asks you about it. Francis also asked, what about many companies use specific kinds of software and databases, such as in the education field, medical, etc.? How do you find out before the interview what kinds of software they're using and how to talk about your technical skills as they relate to those?
Well, I would go to again, I would start off with LinkedIn and go to the manager's email. Now, there's if they don't start giving the technologies um, uh, in that format, I would definitely click to the company page and then just look at other people that work for the company, and somebody will say we work on on these types of platforms. Um, Company websites might be able to give that as well. Where we find um, um, a lot of that information is other people that are looking for positions. So um, you might, get in your networking for people that are still in that profession. You might want to reach out to somebody on LinkedIn that works for the company and see if you can connect with them if you have a chance to find that out. But it's use the internet, use your networks to find out those answers.
Great. And we've got a question from the audience, too. I'm going to go back a slide or two here. The question from the audience said, on slide 7, I was surprised by the last group of questions. Are those appropriate to discuss? And Bill's in recruiting, so tell us about, is it okay to ask the interviewee where else they're looking for work?
It very much is. I mean, there's no now as the interviewee, it's okay to say yes, I'm interviewing other places, and no, I don't feel comfortable telling you where. Um, that's a perfectly good question. I'm sorry, good answer. But it's perfectly fine for any interviewer, including myself, including an HR, or manager of a company, to ask those questions. And most of the time, it's very much, where are we in the process? How many interviews are you doing? Where are you? Is there any other offers on the table that might might take you out of this position? So um, it's really a positive in your favor to say, where are you at currently, and how can we, are we, and when I say we, the client or the recruiter, are we going to be able to work together, or are you too far down on the line onto interview processes that this would be not the right fit?
That's a good take on that. If they're asking you about it, it means they may want you.
That's correct.
So we've got one last question. I don't see anybody else typing right now. I know the name of the person I am interviewing with. I've looked them up on LinkedIn. Is it inappropriate to ask the interviewer for a connection on LinkedIn?
That's a great question. This is one of those times where I would say I would do that after the interview process instead of before, because I don't know. I know that people are smart enough now to know that people are going to be Googled, or people are going to look at their profile on LinkedIn. But I would just say, it's a good way to do it after an interview process instead of before.
Right. I would recommend the same thing. And then during the interview, you can ask them, do you have a LinkedIn profile? Is it okay if we connect, if I invite you to connect? And then by inviting them to connect, it gives you an opportunity to say something to them very, very briefly because of the invitation limitations. But it gives you the opportunity to mention something else that might have sparked in your brain after you walked out of the interview. Sorry. Okay, let's go back to Wanda's question. Is it good to have a project manager profile set up before going in for an interview? Now, the challenge with LinkedIn and having a profile is you have your profile. What I would suggest to you is if you want to focus on the project manager aspect of it, put that in your summary and make sure that your skills and endorsements reflect those project management activities. But don't make a special LinkedIn profile just for that project management. It is definitely okay to modify your summary on a regular basis and make sure that those key points, those key words are focused in your profile as well. So Wanda, I hope that answers your question. So I would like to thank Bill Markham from DICES for helping us on our webinar today. We have recorded this session, and we will be posting it on our YouTube channel for Illinois WorkNet. We will be also posting it on the Illinois WorkNet website. So watch for that news item, and we will be posting it in our Illinois Virtual Job Club network on the group on LinkedIn. So thank you very much for joining us today. I hope everybody has a great afternoon. Watch for our recordings or join us for our other sessions. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you so much, Dee. Have a great one.
You too.